Hello, in this short video for session 6, where we explore the nature of the economy in the current empire, we're going to focus on analysis from both theologians and economists. Then when we meet, we'll discuss these a little more and some other insights. Just to explain what we're doing and not doing here, we're not going into detail about how the economy works, because this isn't an economics course. Instead, we're highlighting particular judgments, particular analyses, which focus on how the economy claims to work, noting in particular that it often takes on a sort of religious flavour. Because what we're especially concerned with is the interaction between economics and religion, a two-way interaction, and in that sense how this empire we live within justifies itself and promotes itself as though it is good and saving, but which actually has costs and sacrifices and people who are expendable. For example, we could consider Max Faber, and there is a little about his thinking in the notes for this session. In particular, how he sees the capitalist economy reshaping what it is to be a human being and how this takes on a religious dimension. He argued that Protestantism had shaped this, and even though the argument is contested, since there were other factors too, the point remains that religion and economics affect each other. So he said, "The earning of more and more money is thought of so purely as an end in itself. Man is dominated by the making of money, by acquisition as the ultimate purpose of life. At the same time, it expresses a type of feeling which is closely connected with certain religious ideas." And he also said, "The capitalist economy is an immense cosmos into which the individual is born, and which presents itself as an unalterable order of things in which he must live." But let's turn to our first theologian, a liberation theologian in Sao Paulo, Jung Mo-sung, whose parents emigrated from Korea as business people, and he intended to get into business, but instead got into theology. And one of his key insights is that liberation theology needs to name more squarely that the discipline of economics has a theology implicit within it. So he argues that the neoliberal version of capitalism, which gives absolute priority to the supremacy of the market, functions as empire, presuming transcendence, that is, as though it has the right to be everywhere, all-encompassing, like a religion embracing the whole of life. This empire seduces us with its good news, an economy which secures freedom and peace and material benefits, meeting our desires while also constructing those very desires. And crucially, it has an idolatrous theology, with the market being seen as an independent reality in itself, the god of the empire who must not be questioned. In fact, to question it, to second guess it, to presume we know better, is the very epitome of sin in this system, because the system only produces the goods for us if we trust it and let the market reign freely, uninterrupted by human interventions. But in the meantime, while we fiddle with it, there will be necessary sacrifices. The poor will suffer until they learn to play the game properly. This is the theology of the system, which needs to be denounced. Interestingly, an economist, John Weeks, makes some similar points. He identifies 8 market myths, which he says underpin the fakeonomics of the system we're living in. The first of these is TINA, there is no alternative. The much repeated insistence on the inevitability of this system, it's the only way. The second myth is that even though many of us have experiences of market failures, we're still taught that regulation is bad. It's a cognitive dissonance we live with. We know the system is full of contradictions, but regulation makes it worse, we're taught. Thirdly, the inherent virtue of competition. We're told it again and again because it obviously makes things better, and it's natural. The fourth myth is that if our experience is otherwise, we're ignorant. It's not that the system is faulty, it's that we are ignorant, and economists know best. If we doubt competition, or that economists know best, the trump card is that we wouldn't want communism, would we? A simple binary. The sixth myth is to question why wealth is distributed as it is to be anti-scientific, its distribution being consistent with its logic or rationality. whereas redistribution, to fiddle with a system, is entirely anti-scientific, based on mere sentiment, so the system teaches us. The seventh myth is that market exchanges are taken to be voluntary, i.e. everyone acts freely, knowing what they're doing. And then the eighth myth, the big market lie, is that it is an efficient system which we can't currently grasp, but one day we'll see it perfectly realised. Simple really, if only we learn to trust the system, which Weeks also compares to obscurantist religion, in other words, like the gods of ancient Greece or Rome, the market may seem tyrannical, but is actually benevolent, serving our interests, even if we can't see it, and requiring obedience, issuing judgments the market allows, even if most of us can't see what the priests of the system are saying. It just is. We should have faith in it. Another theologian, Cynthia Mo-Labida, she calls it hegemonic vision, something so prevalent that it causes us to see it as natural. In this context, she speaks of moral oblivion, how the system makes us morally oblivious to what's going on, again reinforcing this sense that it isn't merely a technical system, but functions much more like a religion. So it fosters privatised morality in us, with personalised solutions, making us look for personal solutions even to the structural issues. What can I do to help? I can support some charities. To the extent that we see the benefits as blessings, we are diverted from seeing the longer histories and systemic issues which consisted of some nations and people stealing from others. The blessings have a history of theft behind them. Where we dare to face these difficult issues, the system causes us to experience denial, or perhaps guilt and grief, but without focusing on solutions which would require change. The sense of entitlement we have reinforces our denials. Where we may want change, we instead despair at our powerlessness. The system is too big. The easier and more common condition is one of unconscious conformity, going along with it. There is considerable corporate investment maintaining public moral oblivion. That is, the system has expensive propaganda reinforcing itself. The seventh ingredient of moral oblivion is that growth is seen as good, even though there are moves to broaden the narrow GDP definition to include reference to human rights and ecological care, but these things are slow in coming about. And lastly, our moral oblivion is embedded in practice, our habits, our consumerism, the norms of life. We'll return to these insights when we meet, and the analysis of some other theologians too, but in particular, you could ask yourselves, do I recognise these critical depictions of the system and its propaganda? How do the interactions between religion and theology and economics resonate with me or challenge me? And what might the implications be? And thirdly, to reform economics, might we also need to reform theology? I look forward to discussing these issues with you.